Welcome to your deep dive. Looks like we're really diving deep into this idea of managing energy, not just time, right? We're looking at the power of full engagement. That's by Jim Loehr and Tony Schwartz. And you've given us some other pieces too that all sort of touch on these similar ideas. Gotta say, this whole concept, it really speaks to me. Who wouldn't want to figure out that secret? To feeling A&D, performing at your best.
It's a question we all kind of wrestle with, yeah. I think what's really cool about Loehr and Schwartz's approach is how they use pro athletes as that model. It's not about cramming more into your day. It's about strategically managing your energy.
Okay, so let's break down this athlete analogy. How does that translate to, let's say, my crazy work day?
Well, think about it this way. How do pro athletes train? They spend a huge chunk of their time, like 90%, just getting their bodies and minds ready. The actual competition, that's like a tiny slice of it. It's about understanding those cycles, of really intense effort and then like strategically recovering.
So instead of just burning ourselves out trying to go, go, go all the time, we should be thinking more like, we're in training for a marathon, not a sprint.
You got it. In fact, Loehr and Schwartz, they use this great analogy of a surgeon, right, about to perform open-heart surgery. You wouldn't want a surgeon who's running on fumes, right? You'd want someone who's calm, focused, energized. That's the state, that full engagement state they're talking about. And it applies to anything, not just sports.
That makes a lot of sense. So how do we actually reach this full engagement?
They break it down into 4 key dimensions of energy.
Yeah.
Physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. And what's really interesting is that these dimensions, they aren't totally separate. They all feed into each other.
So it's not just about going to the gym. It's about realizing how our emotions, our mindset, even our sense of purpose, it all ties in.
Absolutely. And the key is that balance, balancing how much energy we're spending with renewal. The book makes this point that both overuse and underuse, they can actually make our capacity smaller over time.
Okay, so like even if I'm the most zen person in the world, if I'm not physically taking care of myself, that's going to mess everything else up.
That's right. And it works the other way too. And here's where it gets interesting. The book talks about pushing past those normal limits, just like athletes do. They use this quote. It's from Nietzsche. That which does not kill us makes us stronger.
Whoa, that's pretty intense. So we need to be like strategically stressing ourselves out in all these areas to actually grow, but then also making sure we're recovering.
Exactly. Think about how muscles grow. You got to challenge them, then you got to give them time to rebuild. It's the same idea, but for our emotional, mental, and spiritual muscles, so to speak. But how do we actually do this in our crazy lives? That's where positive rituals come in.
Positive rituals. Okay. Tell me more.
Think of them as really specific routines, like super specific for managing your energy. The book argues that these rituals, they're the key to making change more automatic. Less about willpower. They even give some really interesting examples of athletes. Like Ivan Lendl, he had rituals for everything.
Oh, yeah, I remember him. That super intense tennis player, right? So even someone at that level, they rely on these little routines.
Totally. And what's really cool is that these rituals, they can actually be a way for you to live out your values.
Yeah.
They become like a real expression of what matters to you.
Okay, I'm seeing how this all fits together. But let's get down to brass tacks. Give me some concrete examples of how we manage these different energy dimensions. Let's start with physical energy. What do you think?
All right, let's talk fuel. The book, it really stresses how important nutrition is, what we eat and when we eat it. For that steady energy, they recommend focusing on those low-fat proteins, complex carbs, and just watching those portions. It's not about deprivation, it's about being smart about it.
So no more surviving on coffee and willpower, huh? I can definitely get behind that.
Right. And they even have this case study about a guy named George D. He lost a ton of weight just by changing how he ate and adding in those regular meals. Little tweaks can go a long way.
That's encouraging to hear. I think for a lot of us, though, it's the sleep or lack of it. That's the real struggle.
You're absolutely right. The book dives into the research on sleep deprivation and how it affects everything. Our performance, our decision-making, even our mood. They even talk about these natural cycles, of feeling alert and then feeling tired. They happen throughout the day, called ultradian rhythms.
So we shouldn't just be powering through those afternoon slumps. Maybe we should be listening to our bodies a little more.
Exactly. The book suggests putting in those short recovery breaks every 90 to 120 minutes. Could be as simple as stretching, taking a walk, or even closing your eyes for a bit.
I like that. Just being more mindful of those little pauses throughout the day. What about exercise? I always feel more energized after a good workout, but I struggle to make time sometimes.
They address that too. Lower and Schwartz, they're big fans of interval training. Alternating those short bursts of high intensity with rest or lower intensity stuff, they argue it's not only more efficient, but it fits better with our natural energy cycles.
Okay, good to know. So even if I can't carve out an hour for the gym, I can still benefit from some shorter bursts throughout the day.
Exactly. And the research they talk about is pretty convincing. Studies have shown that even those short bursts, they can really boost our health, our energy, and even how well we think.
Wow, I'm starting to see how much we can learn from these athletes. But we've got to remember, physical energy, it's just one piece. What about the emotional side of things?
Now that's where things get interesting. The book, it lays out how much our emotions can impact our performance and our well-being. They talk about those negative emotions like fear or frustration or anger, and how those can drain our energy and make us less effective.
Oh, tell me about it. When I'm feeling stressed or overwhelmed, it's like my brain just shuts down.
It's like running on empty, right? The book actually uses these two tennis players as an example, John McEnroe and Jimmy Connors. McEnroe, he was known for his temper, and he had a shorter career. But Connors, he seemed to play with more joy, more passion. He played for much longer.
So it's not just about pushing through those bad feelings, it's about learning how to handle them well and cultivate more good feelings.
That's right. They talk about the importance of emotional recovery, doing things that help us refill those emotional reserves. Things like being in nature, spending time with loved ones, doing those creative hobbies you enjoy. Those are all ways to recharge emotionally.
This is making so much sense. It's like they're giving us a whole new way to think about how to thrive, not just survive. But we've covered physical energy, emotional energy. How about mental energy?
That's a big one, especially now when it feels like we're constantly bombarded with information and demands, right? Mental energy, it's about focus, concentration, clear thinking, and keeping a positive attitude. It's the fuel for all those thought processes. But like any other type of energy, it runs out and we got to manage it carefully.
So how do we keep our mental energy topped up, especially when it feels like our brains are pulled in a million different directions all at once?
Well, the first thing is to realize that physical and emotional energy, they directly affect our mental capacity. When we're physically wiped or emotionally drained, it's way harder to focus, think clearly. They even tell this story about the boxer, Ray Boom Boom Mancini.
Oh, yeah. I remember him. World champion.
That's right. And he told Lummer that even just one single negative thought could throw off his focus and make him vulnerable in the ring. Shows how even quick little thoughts can really affect how we perform.
That's wild when you think about it. So what can we do to build that mental resilience?
They talk about including activities that help us recover mentally and boost creativity. Things like taking breaks from technology, getting outside, doing hobbies, or practicing mindfulness. It's all about giving our minds a break, let them recharge.
This is so fascinating, but there's one energy dimension we haven't talked about yet. Spiritual energy. What exactly does that mean in this whole context?
It might seem a little out there, but the book actually says this is the strongest, most long-lasting source of motivation we have. They define it as that connection to a deep set of values and a purpose that goes beyond just ourselves. It fuels our passion, our perseverance, it gives meaning to our lives.
So it's like that deeper sense of why we do what we do.
Exactly. And they have this incredibly inspiring story about the employees at Cantor Fitzgerald. They lost so many colleagues in the 9/11 attacks. But even with that immense grief and trauma, they found strength in their shared purpose, and they rebuilt the company.
Wow, that's powerful. So it's not really about religion then, it's about connecting to something bigger, something that gives us meaning.
That's right. And the book says that when what we do matches up with our values and our sense of purpose, it's way more motivating than just chasing rewards.
So how do we tap into that spiritual energy? Seems like it could be a little hard to grasp for some people.
They suggest starting by really digging into what matters most to you. What are your core values? And then find ways to line up your actions, your work, your relationships with those values. They give some great examples of people who found new purpose and meaning by shifting their focus in this way.
This is all so inspiring. But gotta admit, it feels a little daunting too. How do we actually make lasting changes in all these areas? Where do we even start?
That's a great question, and that's exactly what we'll be digging into next.
All right, so we've talked about these 4 dimensions of energy: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, and how they all connect, right? But I think, a lot of us, we can relate to knowing what we should do, But actually changing our habits, making those changes stick, that's a whole other ballgame.
You're right on the money there. It's one thing to get these ideas, but to actually use them in our daily lives, that's where it gets real. And that's why the book really focuses on those positive rituals.
So remind me, what exactly are these positive rituals, and how do they help us make that leap from knowing to doing?
Well, just think of them as very specific routines, like super intentional, things you build into your day.
Hmm.
To support those energy management goals, right? Luhr and Schwartz say, the more specific you are about when and how you'll do a new habit, the more likely you'll actually follow through.
So it's not just about, okay, I got to exercise more. It's more like, I'm going for a 20-minute walk every day at lunch.
Exactly. They even share this story about a couple, Ted and Donna. They were struggling to find quality time together. With work and family, it was chaos. So what did they do? They made a ritual. 30 minutes together every morning, 8 a.m., sharp no matter what. No phones, no kids, just focused time to connect.
Wow. That's a really good idea. I can see how having that set structure would make it way easier to prioritize that time. And the book actually backs this up with research, right?
Yep. They talk about studies that show people are way more likely to stick to something when they say exactly when and where they'll do it. There's even research on women and breast self-exams. Those who were specific about the when and where, they actually followed through more often.
So it's almost like by making those details super concrete, you don't even have to think about it as much. It becomes automatic. You're not relying on willpower anymore.
That's the idea. And it's not just for personal habits either. The book also looks at the power of rituals at work. They talk about this legendary football coach, Bill Walsh, San Francisco 49ers. He was known for being super meticulous, believed in doing things the right way every single time.
Oh, yeah. I've heard of him. Considered one of the best coaches ever, right?
He was a huge believer in rituals. He felt that by setting up really precise routines,
Yeah.
For everything, practices, meetings, he was building a culture of excellence, consistency. His players always knew what to expect, and that helped them perform at their best, even under pressure.
So rituals aren't just about building good habits. They're about building resilience, getting us ready to show up when it really matters.
Exactly. But, we all slip up sometimes, even with the best intentions. The book talks about that, how change is hard. And they stress the importance of being kind to ourselves when we inevitably mess up.
So it's not about beating ourselves up, right, when we fall short. It's about learning from it
Yeah,
and adjusting as we go.
exactly. They suggest checking in on your progress regularly, figuring out where you're struggling, and tweaking those rituals as needed. It's an ongoing process, experimenting, refining, and they really bring all these ideas to life with this great case study, the story of Roger B.
Oh, yeah, the case study. Tell me about Roger.
Well, Roger's this guy who's really having a tough time. He's overwhelmed, exhausted, just feeling totally out of whack. He's got all these demands, work, family, personal goals. And he's like, how do I manage all of this?
I think a lot of us have been there.
Right. So Roger decides to try the author's program, hoping to find some tools, to manage his energy, get back on track. And through the program, he goes on the self-discovery journey. Starts by figuring out what his core values are. Then he takes a gut hard look at his habits, what he's doing. And finally, he starts building those positive rituals to match up what he's doing with what really matters to him.
Okay, but it wasn't all easy, right? I remember reading that Roger had some bumps along the way.
Oh, for sure. At first, he really struggles, trying to stick to those new rituals. He has setbacks. He resists change. Happens to all of us, right? We've all been there.
Definitely. So what helped him turn things around?
Well, with the support from the program, he eventually starts to see the results. He starts feeling those benefits we've been talking about. More energy, better focus. He's connecting with his family more. And he's got a renewed sense of passion for his work.
So it's not about some overnight transformation. It's about that consistency, those little victories that add up over time.
Exactly. And what's so great about Roger's story is that it's not just his story. It shows us that change is possible. It's not about being perfect. It's about making those choices day after day that help us live more fulfilling, meaningful lives.
I love that. That's such a powerful message.
And, one thing that really stuck with me was full engagement. It's not just about hitting some external goal. It's about living a life that reflects your values, that brings you joy, satisfaction, and lets you make a positive impact on the world around you.
That's such a great point. So as we're wrapping up this deep dive into the power of full engagement, I'm curious, What really resonated with you? What are your big takeaways? I'm still thinking about those positive rituals, I think it's so smart how just setting up a specific routine can actually make it easier to make those good changes we're talking about.
It's like taking the thinking out of it, yeah.
Yeah.
Turning healthy habits into something you just do
Yeah,
automatically.
like Ted and Donna with their morning coffee together. It's not even about finding the time. It's about making that time like untouchable.
And it's amazing how those little things, when you do them consistently, they can really change other areas of our lives too.
Listening to, I've been thinking about those times in my own life when I've felt that full engagement, those moments when I'm just completely lost in what I'm doing. Time flies by and I feel so energized afterwards. It's like, it just happens, I don't even have to try.
That's such an interesting point. It makes you think about what brings on those flow states
Mm,
and how can we set ourselves up for them,
mm.
make them happen more often.
Right. And maybe that's where aligning our actions with our values comes in. When we're doing things that really matter to us, that connect to our purpose, it's like our energy just gets a boost naturally.
It's like we're tapping into something
Oh.
like unlimited. Right. I think that's what makes this whole idea of spiritual energy so powerful. It's not about some mystical thing. It's about knowing why you do what you do.
And that why, it can be so different for everyone, can it? For some people, it's about making a difference in the world. For others, it's about being creative or having close relationships or just following a passion that really lights them up.
Exactly. It's
Right.
about finding that thing, that spark that really makes you feel alive,
Right.
and then figuring out how to make it a part of your everyday life.
I love that. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm curious, what's one small step you want to take after all this? What's one positive ritual you could try that would help you tap into those four energy dimensions and live a more engaged life?
For me, I think it's about being more intentional in the mornings. Can experiment a little, maybe create a little ritual that combines a few things I know give me energy, like a quick meditation, some journaling, maybe a walk outside,
Yeah.
just to set myself up for the day and connect with that deeper purpose.
I love that. And me. I think I want to be more aware of my emotions as the day goes on. I'm going to try to put in some little breaks for emotional recovery. Maybe just a few minutes to listen to some music I like, call a friend, or just do some deep breathing just to hit reset and avoid those energy crashes.
Those sound like great rituals. And the cool thing is, it's just the start, right? There's so much we can do.
Exactly. It's all about trying things out and seeing what works for you. And I think the biggest takeaway from all this is that we can all achieve full engagement. It's not about being perfect. It's about making those small choices day by day that align with what we value and help us live richer, more meaningful lives.
So well said. And remember, this is a journey. It's not about reaching some end point. There'll be times we slip up, but that's part of it. The important thing is to be curious, be kind to ourselves, and be open to learning and growing.
So as you go about your day to day, think about what gives you energy, what brings you joy, what makes you feel alive, and then start creating those rituals, those positive rituals that will help you bring more of that energy and engagement into your life.
And until next time, may your energy be boundless and your engagement be full.